Hi everyone, Allie here from The Family Meeple, and today I have the second solo challenge ranking video for 2023. I posted my earlier video for the first 10 games that I played in 2023 for my 10x5 solo challenge back in June, and these 10 games are the ones that I played between May and August of this year. So you'll see in front of me I have 10 different games. I played all of them 5 times during the challenge, and today we're going to rank them from the one that I enjoyed the least for a solo game to the most for a solo game. This doesn't necessarily match my ranking or what it would be for a multiplayer game. This is strictly based on my solo plays. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the table out, and we will get started with number 10. Coming in at number 10 is Calico, designed by Kevin Russ and published by Flatout Games and AEG, with artwork by Beth Sobel. Calico is a tile placement game where you are placing hexagonal tiles into your quilt board in an effort to match patterns and colors and score points. The solo game for Calico plays exactly like a multiplayer game, with one exception. You are going to be cycling through the tiles that are in the display and discarding a tile each round after you take something. I played the solo game using the scenarios from the rulebook, which I have really enjoyed in the other 2 games that I've played from this company, which are Cascadia and Verdant. And what I found is I played the game 6 times solo and never beat the first scenario. It was absolutely impossible because so much relies on the tiles that just happen to come out of the bag. That being said, the game is still enjoyable and I did like my plays of it. I am going to keep this in the collection, but what I found was that I actually enjoyed the game more multiplayer than solo, because at least in the multiplayer, everyone is subject to the same sort of luck of the draw and trying to complete your quilts and really getting down to a point where one single tile will work to fit into your quilt to score well, and it just never comes up. But in the multiplayer, everyone is in that same boat, and so you're just comparing your scores in who did the best, as opposed to with the solo game where I'm trying to beat the scenarios and I simply could not achieve all of the goals. So that is my number 10, Calico. Number 9 is Power Plants. Power Plants was published by Kids Table Board Games. It was designed by Adam Dalton and illustrated by Apolline Etienne, I believe is how you pronounce that. So Power Plants is an area control game that is definitely lightweight and intended for families. Like I said, this is published by Kids Table Board Games, which they specialize in family weight games that are great for adults and kids, probably in the age range of maybe starting at 7 for a lot of these larger box games that they've published. This is not the first game from them that I have played solo and picked up. I've also played Wreck Raiders, Fossilis, and Creature Comforts. They're all by different designers, but the same company. In Power Plants, you are going to be creating a garden out in the center of the table by placing these patch tiles out. And depending on what the patch tile is, which color it is, and which particular cards that you've decided to play with for that round, when you place that patch tile out and add it to the garden, it will do different things. So you have the option when you place out a patch tile to either take I think it's called the sprout action, which is the action of the tile that you place, and you take that one tile action that's very strong. Or you can choose to use the grow action, which means that you're actually going to activate the grow action of any of the tiles that you connected it to. So you're having to make this decision, and you're going to be placing your little sprite tokens out into the garden in the effort to get majorities within each of the different fields at the end of the game. The solo mode actually works really well. It's quite simple, but the reason that this is coming in at number 9 is that The solo mode relies on specific rules on what the AI opponent will do, and it depends on which patch tiles you take. I found that some of the patch tiles are more strong for the AI than some of the other ones. Some of them were more fun to play with than other ones. And the biggest knock for this one for me is that even after 5 plays, I always had to refer to the rulebook on the AI player's turn. None of it was intuitive enough for me to be able to set the rules aside and just play the game. I always had to look at, okay, they are placing this type of patch out. When they place it, where are they going to place it? What are the rules? What are the tiebreakers? And then once they place it, what action are they going to take? Because they're not taking the same action that you are. And so that's what really dropped it down to number 9 for me. This is one that I primarily picked up to play with my daughters, who are 8 and almost 10. We have not played it yet together, but it's one that I'd like to get to the table soon with them, maybe when their grandma is back in town and we can have a family game night. But that is my number 9, Power Plants. Number 8 is Black Sonata. Black Sonata was designed by John Keane and published by TGG Games. Black Sonata is the only solo-only game on this current challenge that I had added, and it is a solo-only hidden movement and deduction game. It's not the only deduction game on the list, and you'll see the other one a bit higher. I do enjoy deduction games, and so that's why I added Black Sonata to the list. It is an intriguing puzzle to have to find the Dark Lady in Shakespeare's London in this game, and the card system that they created for this is absolutely ingenious. One of the reasons that this dropped down to number 8 for me, though, is that I'm not very good at the game, and even when I was playing on a relatively easy mode, found it very challenging in order to actually track and remember the Dark Lady's movements. One of the things that you have to kind of do in this game is to follow her path the first time that you go through the deck. And then you have to memorize that to a certain extent and anticipate where she's going to be. Because on your turn, you're going to be able to do one of a couple of different actions. You can't actually move and try to discover the location of the Dark Lady on the same turn. So you have to have moved to her location on the turn before she gets there in order to search for her at a location and find her. And then once you find her, you're going to be collecting clue cards that will help you discover the 3 traits that the Dark Lady has. And if you can discover those 3 traits and then confront her, again, you have to be at her location, know she's there, confront her, and get all of them correct to win. And then there's a little bit of a scoring element around how quickly you can do that, and you'll get a point score with that. But honestly, in my mind, it's just either you win because you found her or you don't when you didn't. I also included the expansion, the Fair Youth expansion in this one, and I only played, I think, 1 or 2 of the expansion elements in there, and they were enjoyable, but they did add some complexity to the game. It's one that I'm going to continue to explore and continue to play through the expansion content and check the rest of it out. But it is one that's a little bit of a brain burner, and so I have to be in the right mood to play it. But that is my number 8, Black Sonata. Number 7 is Aquatica. Aquatica is a game designed by Ivan Tazovsky, I believe is how you pronounce that, and published by Arcane Wonders. This is a Dice Tower essential, so if you're familiar with the Dice Tower YouTube channel and Tom Vassell, this is one of the games that's in his Essentials line. Aquatica is a very interesting game. It is a kind of tableau building, but not really. It's definitely a hand management game. You're going to have a hand of cards. And then what you're going to be doing with those cards is on your turn, you will play a card from your hand, which will allow you to take specific actions. One of the main actions that you're going to do is either conquer or purchase location cards from the main board, and then you will add those to your personal player board by sliding them into one of your 5 slots. Then each of the cards that are on there have different actions and abilities that you can use or exploit as you explore the depths of these locations that you've conquered or purchased. And those will allow you to do more actions or stronger versions of actions. So for example, you might play a card that allows you to conquer a location, and one of the locations you already have on your board allows you to explore its depths and add 2 or 3 extra power to your conquer action, which allows you to conquer stronger and stronger locations. You're also able to add more characters to your hand, and you'll also be collecting these little manta tokens that you can use to, again, augment your actions and make them stronger. The solo mode that came in the base game box is okay. It's not great, but it works. It definitely is something that you can use to kind of learn the game. But what I found is there was a solo mode on Board Game Geek that was a little bit more robust and had an actual AI opponent that was collecting cards and scoring points and using the extra manta tokens to dictate by drawing out of a bag what action they were going to take. So it would tell you if they're going to recruit a character card and which one they were going to recruit, either the more expensive or the least expensive. And it would tell you which location they were going to conquer, whether the strongest or the weakest or one of a particular faction or color. And then it would also allow you to play more realistically like you would when you were playing in a multiplayer game. In the base game solo mode, every time that you would use your Matrona card to actually pull your cards back up into your hand, it would push the end of the game triggers, which didn't really feel authentic, I guess. It didn't feel like what I expect a multiplayer game would feel like. Now, I have not played this one multiplayer, but it is one that I would like to try multiplayer. It's fairly simple and straightforward, and I think it's one that a lot of people would really enjoy playing. And that's my number 7, Aquatica. Number 6 is Wayfinders. Wayfinders was published by Pandasaurus Games, and it was designed by Thomas Dagenet L'Espérance, I believe is how you pronounce that. Wayfinders is a point-to-point movement game where you're collecting resources and trying to complete objectives to actually place your hangers out on different tiles on the board. Wayfinders is a 2 to 4 player game out of the box. It does not include a solo mode, but there is a fan-made solo mode available on Board Game Geek that I have really enjoyed. The fan-made mode utilizes a dice to determine where the AI opponent will be placing their meeples, when they will be taking the travel action, and how they will be traveling around this grid that you create with these tiles. So in Wayfinders, you're going to, at the beginning, create a grid of tiles out on the main board. It's a 5x5 grid, and both you and the AI are going to start in the center on the main hanger tile. And what you'll do is there's a separate hanger board that's off to the side that gets filled with these little resource tokens. And on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can either take one of your 5 meeples and place them out into one of the hanger slots that's available, or you can decide to pull all of your meeples back from the hanger board, collect the resources, and then travel or fly your plane around the different tiles. And when you collect the resources off the hanger board, it doesn't matter if you had your meeple, then the opponent's meeple, then your meeple. When you pull yours back, you will slide the first 2 up out of the hanger board, and those are the 2 that you get. So one of the interesting things about it is that because the AI player is going to be making decisions based on a die roll, there is the potential that they will send one worker out to the hanger and then immediately take those resources and fly back, which is a little bit different than what you would normally expect from an opponent, where you wouldn't expect them to waste, I say waste, they wouldn't spend a whole turn just to get one resource off the hanger board. It adds a little bit of randomness to the game that may not be there in the multiplayer. But once you've collected your resources, what you're going to do is, like I said, you're going to fly your plane around to different tiles. And every time you move your plane onto a tile, if there's no hangers on that tile, then you have to pay a resource of a matching color in order to travel there. If someone else does already have one of their hangers on that board, then that tile is free to travel through. It's free for everyone, including you and the AI, no matter what. Now, the AI is actually not going to pay to travel through anything, but if they've placed something, then it makes it free for you. Then you can place a hanger onto these tiles by spending a specific set of resources that matches the bottom of the tile. And when you spend those resources and you place your hanger onto that tile, then you're going to get a benefit. Some of them are instant benefits, like getting extra resources or having an ongoing discount. You can travel through tiles of a particular type for free, or you can spend a particular type of resource as a wild, or there will be tiles on there that are endgame scoring tiles, and those are the ones that you really have to pay attention to and make sure that you get some of those endgame scoring tiles so that you can increase your score at the end of the game. And it plays until someone has, I think, 1 or 2 hangers left, whether it's you or the AI, and then you'll add up the points for all of the tiles that you have with endgame scoring objectives, and then any points for the in-game tiles as well. They all have a certain point value for you. So that is Wayfinders. I have a feeling this is one that not a lot of people know about. This is another one that I haven't tried multiplayer yet, but I picked it up on sale from Pandasaurus probably a year, maybe 2 years ago now, and I just love this game. It's so much fun, and I like that there is a solo mode from BGG, even if it's just a fan-made mode, so that I can play this game on my own, even though there's no one else here to play this one with me. But if you haven't played Wayfinders, I highly encourage you to check it out and see if you enjoy it. So that is my number 6, Wayfinders. Number 5 is Mission Red Planet. Mission Red Planet was published by Fantasy Flight Games and designed by Bruno Feduti and Bruno Cathala. Mission Red Planet is a game that I picked up, oh my goodness, probably 3 years ago now, because this game is I think they have a reprint coming for this one, but for a while it was very much out of print and could be very difficult to find. I managed to find a new in-shrink copy of it for a reasonable price and decided to snatch it right then while I found it, because a lot of them were very, very highly priced. So Mission Red Planet is an area majority game that has a steampunk sort of theme, and you are traveling and sending astronauts to Mars, the red planet, and you want to have the most astronauts in each of the different zones of Mars in order to collect precious resources that are on the planet through mining, and then those will turn into endgame points. There's actually very little points outside of the mining, so you will have an opportunity, even if you didn't have the majority in a zone on the first scoring round, you could still get majority in a second scoring round or even the third scoring round, and you're actually going to earn more from those mining points in the third round than the first round. The fun thing about Mission Red Planet, and this is one that I have played multiplayer before, I think at 5 players, it plays up to 6, I think. Yeah, it plays up to 6 in the base box. It plays 2 to 6. And one of the fun things is that everyone has the same set of cards in their hand, and they all do the same thing. And you're doing simultaneous action selection. So you're taking this hand of cards and you're deciding which card do you want to play on each turn. And you play it face down, and then they get actioned from the highest to the lowest. So you do a countdown. 9, anyone who plays a 9, they play their card in player order based on the first player. Then 8, 7, and all the way down until you get to 1. And a lot of these cards have negative player interactions, like you can blow up a ship that hasn't actually made it to Mars yet. You can play sabotage cards where you can, I think that's the one where you blow up the ships. There's a femme fatale that ends up, I think, killing one of your opponent's characters and replacing it with one of yours. there's all these different cards that do different things, and things can get very crazy depending on who plays which card when and what order those cards get played in. There's no solo mode in the original game, but there is a fan-made mode that I found on Board Game Geek that utilizes a lot of the elements from the 2-player variant that's in this box. So what you'll do is you will set up to play normally for yourself, and then you'll create an opponent on your right and an opponent on your left, and those will be set up using the rules from the 2-player mode. So you essentially take their deck of cards, and there's 3 specific ones that normally human players will play later on in the game. They won't be playing them in the first few rounds. So you'll take those 3 cards, you'll add, I think, 1 or 2 extra ones randomly to that, shuffle it up, mix them up, put those on the bottom, shuffle the rest of the cards, put them on the top, and that creates the decks for your 2 AI opponents. And so each round, you're going to pick your card just like you normally would, decide which one you're going to play, and then you're going to flip a card for both of the AI players, and then you will execute the actions in the same order that you would normally. So the higher cards get action first, and then the lower cards get actioned at the bottom. There's very minor tweaks to the rules, and all of the different cards that the AI plays, for the most part, they're taking the actions exactly as you would, which makes it easier to remember. And then when there's kind of ties or nuances, or you're not quite sure what they would pick, they have this priority list that they use where they take the tokens that have all of the different zones on them. There's 2 sets in the base game that normally you would use to manipulate where ships are traveling to. You take one out, you randomly organize it from in a long line top to bottom, and then if they have to target something and there's more than one ship in like the available display, they'll look at the priority list, they'll target based on that, and then you move that one to the bottom so that planets that haven't, or zones that haven't been targeted frequently, will get targeted next. It's really ingenious, very, very simple to play, and I found that it actually felt very similar to my multiplayer game of Mission Red Planet, and I had a lot of fun with this one. It looks fantastic on the table. The theme is fantastic. I love the steampunk theme of this one. And if you have this game at home and you're trying to get it to the table and you just don't have that right group to get it to the table, maybe your game group doesn't particularly like those mean cards where you're blowing somebody's planet or ship up, then this is one to check out the solo mode for, because it feels less mean, I guess, if you're blowing up the AIs in the game and if they're attacking you. So it feels a little bit less personal. But it still does retain a lot of the enjoyment that I had from playing this multiplayer, and I'm glad that this game is officially off of my shelf of shame that it sat on for quite a while until I found the solo mode. So that is my number 5, Mission Red Planet. Number 4 is Bot Factory. Bot Factory was designed by Vital Lacerda and João Quintela Martins, I think is how it's pronounced. I apologize if I've completely butchered that name. Bot Factory was published by Eagle Gryphon Games, and this is a spin kind of on Kanban EV. So if any of you are familiar with Vital Lacerda games, he designs very, very heavy, complex games that come, a lot of them in these giant boxes. You can see several of them on my shelf back here. I have the Gallerist and Vinos from Vital Lacerda. But Bot Factory is a family weight game, and it is solidly family weight. This is a very easy game to learn, to play, and to get other people into. It is absolutely adorable. It has these cute little robot meeples that come in the game, and they're just super cute. All of the components are top notch. Again, it's Eagle Gryphon, so it's what you would come to expect from them if you have played any of their games. But like I said, it is essentially the family version of Kanban EV. I have not played this one multiplayer yet. I have only played it solo, But one of the things that I'm looking forward to is that this is one that I could get my daughters into, that my mom could play with me, that my friends could play with me, even if they're not really heavy gamers. But it still gives me that same sort of thinkiness that I've come to expect from Vital Lacerda games, where you really do have to think at least 2 or 3 turns ahead if you're going to score well. So in Bot Factory, you are going to be creating robots by collecting blueprint tiles and then collecting part tiles and then turning those part tiles in, placing them on an assembly board. And then once the assembly board has all 3 of the part tiles for the robot, then you get to collect the robot if you place the 3rd tile. Now, in a multiplayer game, it is possible that someone else places the first piece and the second piece. They'll get a benefit for placing those pieces onto the assembly line. But if you are the person who places that 3rd and final robot part, you are the one who collects the robot. You have to have a blueprint that matches that robot color in order to actually complete the robot and collect it. And then once I think someone has completed 5 robots, or if one of the 4 robot colors is gone, then that's going to trigger the end of the game. So there's a lot of ways that you can see the end of the game coming, and that's true in both the multiplayer and the solo game. One of the things that I really, really liked about the solo version of this game that doesn't happen in most games. I play a lot of games solo, and this is rare. The solo rules, for the most part, are actually in the main rule set. So when you're reading the rules for Bot Factory, there are 2 sort of AI characters. One of them is Sandra, and if you've played Comp on EV, you'll be familiar with Sandra. She is in all of the games, and she is moving around the factory and checking to see that everyone is doing their work correctly, I guess. So she just kind of gets in your way. There's also a second AI player that you use for the solo games only, which is called Viella, I believe is what his name is. And in the rulebook, you'll have all of the regular rules for the boards. And it'll tell you how the board works, what happens when you go there and take that action. And then you'll have a section that says, here's what happens when Sandra is on this board. And then you'll have a section that says, here's what happens when Viella is on this board. So as you're playing the game, if you need to reference the rules for any reason or you're not sure what they do, you can actually just flip through and it's right with all of your information. And I loved the way that that was integrated into the rulebook. The solo mode plays extremely simply. It does have this little tile flip mechanism. So you have tiles that work for Viella, and it will tell you, 1, which of the 4 boards he's going to move to, and then 2, which robot color he's going to target on that board. So if he moves to the first board, then he's going to look to see for that particular robot color if there are 2 tiles, I think 1 or 2 tiles on that assembly line, and if so, he's just going to discard them. And if that condition is not true, then he's actually going to take that robot and discard the robot itself. So it's really challenging. You kind of have to pay attention to when you're finishing the robots and when you're leaving it and what color he's had before. But there's a lot of mitigation and a lot of planning you can do based on the fact that he's flipping tiles instead of, for example, rolling a dice. And then you'll also have some objectives that you have to meet for the solo mode. One of them might be that you have to complete 3 of the same color robot. Now in the solo, there are only 3 of each color robot. So you have to plan carefully to make sure that Viella does not discard that robot that you need, because you can only complete 5 robots total. You'll also be manipulating the value of each of the robots for the end of the game. And so one of the things that you might have as an objective is you have to have 3 different robots all above a certain value for the end of the game. And that can be very challenging because as you complete a robot, their value actually moves down, and then you have to go and take an action to bump that value back up. So it's a lot about timing. I had so much fun with this game, and I can't wait to introduce it to more people. I think it's a perfect introduction to Lacerda style games for people who are just getting into the hobby or for people that just enjoy lighter games and they want to get a little bit of that puzzly, planning ahead, forward thinking, but they don't want to dive all the way in with something that has a complexity like Kanban EV. So that is my number 4 bot factory. All right, that brings us to the top 3. And you guys, the top 3 on this countdown was so hard to pick. I use the PubMeeple engine to rank after these solo challenges. And these last 3 games are all just absolutely fantastic. They're ones that I wanted to pull out again and again and again and play. So the first of those is The Search for Planet X. This is published by Foxtrot Games and Renegade Game Studios. This is designed by Ben Rossett and Matthew O'Malley. And The Search for Planet X is a deduction game. This game is an app. It's not app assisted. It is an app driven game. So you have to have the app in order to play the game. The app is free and it works extremely well. And this game actually does play solo out of the box. So it includes solo rules and it's a separate mode within the app, so that it runs an AI player who's going to also be collecting information and also trying to find the location of Planet X. So in this game, you are going to have a space board that's out in front of you. And what you're doing is you actually are running a telescope. And so you are observing the night sky and trying to deduce where this mysterious Planet X is at within the sky. There are 2 modes of play. There's like an easier mode and a more difficult mode that has, I think, more sectors of the sky and more rules and more objects that could be there. But you'll place it on one of the sides and it will have a certain number of sectors on the board. And as you play each round, you are actually going to spend time as a resource to research what's in the sky. So you may say, okay, I want to research in these 4 sectors, how many comets are there? And what you'll do is you'll put that into the app. You'll say, in these sectors that I can see right now, how many comets are there? And it will come back with a number. And then you have to figure out, okay, if there's 2 in here and it's 4 sectors, where are they actually at? So you're collecting this information about what's in the sky that you're looking at. And there's specific logic rules that are in place that tells you, I think, for example, on one of them, the comets all have to be within a span of X number of sectors. I don't remember exactly what all the logic rules are. And the reason for that is that this game is the first one that I pulled off of the shelf in May. And I straight played it like 6 times within a week and a half. So I finished this several months ago and it was just so much fun. I couldn't put it away. Part of that is that it's challenging because the AI actually deduces where Planet X is very quickly. And so you can easily lose at this game, or he'll be like 1 turn ahead of you. So I lost quite a bit, but it still is so much fun. And as you take these actions, it'll tell you how much time you had to spend. So you'll move your marker around, and depending on where your marker is and the AI's marker is, then the visible sky will move. So on certain turns, you actually can't ask any questions about the part of the sky that you can't see. So you have to kind of plan out when you're going to ask about these. It has these nice, big, like right on logic boards that you can track all of the information that you're getting. It tells you in the rule book how to make like quick annotations so that you can keep track of what's where. And then you have these player screens also that gives you all of the logic rules on there so that you know when you're playing on both standard and extended mode or difficult mode, what the logic rules are that you're working with. So this is one, it does play up to 4 players. I have not played this one multiplayer. I don't know that I have anyone that I know of specifically who would like this type of game, this logic puzzle type of game. My oldest daughter might. She has really enjoyed playing Haba's The Key Sabotage at Lucky Llama Land with me. But I think this might be just a step above where she's ready for yet. But someday we'll be able to play this together. So that is my number 3, The Search for Planet X. Number 2 is Woodcraft. Woodcraft is designed by Ross Arnold and Vladimir Suchy and published by Delicious Games, and in the US it's published by Rio Grande Games as well. So Woodcraft is the newest game at the time from Vladimir Suchy. This is actually a co-design from Ross Arnold, who sort of started the design and then collaborated with Vladimir Suchy to bring this to life through his company, Delicious Games. So Woodcraft is definitely one of the heavier games in the list for these 10. And if you have played any games from Vladimir Suchy, then this will feel fairly familiar to you in the tightness of the actions and the economy. So in Woodcraft, you will have, I believe it's a total of 14 turns throughout the entire game, which means that for most games, you are taking a total of 14 actions. That's it. That's all you get to try to score a certain number of points. And like a lot of his games, the solo mode that's included in the box is essentially a beat your own score. They give you a target score and say, this would be a good score, this would be a great score. And then the solo mode is run with an AI deck of cards. It's not an opponent, but it's a deck of cards that you will flip. And what it does is there is an action selection wheel board in the middle of the table. And on your turn, you're taking one of those actions and then moving it to the next quadrant. And so the actions in the back that nobody's taking start to get more and more powerful because you'll start getting bonuses for them. So the AI cards, when you flip them over, will tell you, take 1, sometimes 2 of those action tiles and move them forward. So it simulates having another player who's taking actions and moving them forward. So you're not just being able to take all of the actions on the back half and get all of those extra bonuses. You can't depend on the action being there when it comes back around to you for your next turn. You can typically still take that action if you need it or you want to, but you won't get the bonuses that may have been with it on the turn before. It also will simulate, to a certain extent, the race for, there's a track for reputation points, and whoever gets to certain milestones on that track or certain points on that track first will get a bonus. And so the AI player will actually be moving up that reputation track. And then they will also, towards the end of the game, I think around rounds 10 and 13, they will take out some of the common objective cards. So if you haven't done it and claimed it before then they'll just take those one out randomly, and it might be the one that you were planning on trying to score. So in Woodcraft, what you're doing is, like I said, you're going to select an action from this main board that will allow you to basically do different things with dice. It's a dice manipulation game. One of the things you can do is buy dice, or you can actually plant dice into pots that you have on your board. You can hire helpers. You can take out extra contracts for items that you want to build. And all of the items that you're building will be requiring specific dice combinations. So it might be a green 6, a green 4, and a green 2. And when you go to turn those in, you have to have those on your board, have collected them or cultivated them or cut them down into the right size, because it's an exact match. You can't overspend. If it says it needs to be a 4, then it has to be a 4. And if it says it has to be green, it has to be green. So you can also improve your workshop. So you can get extra saw blades where it lets you cut your dice. So you can turn a 6 into a 4 and a 2. You can buy extra pots so that you can start planting and growing trees with kind of your scrap wood. And then you can harvest them or cultivate them whenever you want to. And there's kind of all kinds of different things that you can do that you have to combine into the right order in order to reach those target goals. This is one that I have not played multiplayer. Again, it is on the heavier side. And even at solo, it was one of the longer games as far as playtime. And part of that is because it's so tight and you only have those 14 actions, that if you're trying to hit that target score and you're not just kind of playing to play the game, you really are working to hit that target score, I found that it can be a little bit AP or analysis paralysis inducing, which if you're playing multiplayer could be a problem. If you're playing solo and you're not under a time crunch, I don't really find that to be an issue, which is why this still comes in at number 2. I like being able to take that time, usually in the evening, to set it up and really just explore the game. Feel like I could kind of math out where I can go, which actions I can take, what order I need to take them in, how I can complete all of my cards, how I can get more order cards, which ones that are out there are going to work for me. Do I go kind of heavy on the helper strategy? Do I go heavier on the workshop kind of tools upgrade strategy? There's all these different things that you can do in the game and explore, but you have to a certain extent, be willing to sort of put the time in on this one. So this is my number 2, which is Woodcraft. All right, that brings us to number 1. The top game that I am ranking as a solo experience from this recent 10x5 challenge is Boon Lake. Boon Lake was designed by Alexander Pfister and published by Capstone Games. Boon Lake is one of the more recent games from Alexander Pfister. I don't remember what year this came out. I want to say it's maybe a year or 2 old. This is another sort of rondel or one-way track movement game. So if you're familiar with Great Western Trail or Maracaibo from Alexander Pfister, this has a very similar feel and mechanic to it in that you have a boat and you are traveling down the river. I know it's called Boon Lake, but like there's no lake. It's just a river. So you're traveling down this river and you can travel kind of as fast as you want to a certain extent, or as slow as you want. And you'll go down the first time and come around through the first, I think they're called locks. And then you'll go back up to the top. And the second time you come down, you're going to go through the second path all the way down to the end. And when you get past that final lock, then that triggers the end of the game. So the solo mode is actually included in the base game. It plays 1 to 4 players. And the solo mode is run by, it's kind of like an AI card system, but it's tiles. So you have these little square tiles that you mix up, and you mix them up as far as orientation as well. So they should be going in any kind of crazy direction. And then each of the player boards that's in here, you'll flip over and use that for the AI player. So in the game, you're going to be moving your boat down, but the main thing that you're going to be doing is action selection. So it's a little bit similar to Woodcraft in that you're going to select an action from a board in order to, on each of your turns, that'll dictate what you're going to do. So this action selection board will dictate how far you can travel on the river. So if you take an action from the top, then you'll be able to, I think, travel the farthest on the river. And then if you take from the bottom, then you can't travel very far. And you actually, I think if you take from the bottom, you have to spend victory points. It's been a while. This is another one that I finished like right at the beginning of the challenge because like the Search for Planet X, I just couldn't stop playing it. It's so good. I just wanted to pull it out again and again and again. So you'll be taking one of the action tiles, and in a multiplayer game, the way that it would work is on the left-hand side of the action tile, it gives you an action, and you take that action as the active player. And then on the right side of the tile, there's a second action that everyone at the table would get to take. It doesn't really work that way with a solo, but in a multiplayer, it would work that way. So once you've done your action, everyone's done their action, then that tile gets put at the bottom, and then you get to move your boat up to the number of spaces from the location that you took the tile. Then everything slides up. And so you're trying to cycle through these different tiles and actions, and you really can't or don't want to take the same action multiple times in a row. The things that you're going to do on these action tiles is plate cards from your hand into your tableau. You're going to be placing tiles out onto the board as you explore and settle this Boon Lake area in 4 different regions. You'll be adding or placing cattle onto these tiles. You'll be placing settlements or settlers onto the tile. So you actually place one of your settlers onto the tile first, and then you can upgrade your settler into a house, and then you can upgrade the house into these larger settlements on the board that will score you more points and score points in different ways. And all of these elements you're sort of taking off of your own player board. And if you are familiar with like Great Western Trail again, as you take things off of your board, you're going to earn points. You're going to increase what you will earn during the scoring phases where you're going to get income. And then at the end game, you'll score points for them if you've kind of cleared off the bottom rows of your player board as well. And I think that's most of what you're doing is trying to place things out onto the board. The AI player, like I said, it has this tile system. So what you'll do is you'll flip over the tile and it will tell you to move them up on their little cactus track on a lot of them, which is just like base points that they're going to score. And then it will tell you if I think there's one of two tiles that they look for. And if that's like on the top or on the bottom, I think on the bottom, then they'll do an action. And then they'll take their main action, which will tell you in a priority, like if this tile, like these are the 3 actions that it's looking for, and you'll take the one that's furthest to the top, and then you'll move that down. They'll score or do specific actions based on what it is. They'll add tiles out to the board. They'll add cows to tiles. They'll add buildings to tiles. So they act a lot like another player. And then they'll move their boat as far as they possibly can. So if they take a tile from the 4 location, they will move their boat 4. So they do, similar to Great Western Trail Solo, push the game faster than maybe human players would, because if you're playing with other humans, you kind of pace each other. And in the game, you have to kind of keep up with the AI or you're going to get a little bit left behind. There's 4 scoring rounds in the game, interim scoring rounds. So once you hit one of those locks, once anybody passes it, then you'll stop and you have to choose one of the 4 scoring objectives that were added at the beginning of the game to score at that time. It'll give you specific criteria that you have to meet. So for example, in the first round, it may actually be 0. It might be cows on pastures. And in the first round, you don't have to have any. And you can put your 1 point out there and you can score a point. But by the time you get to the 4th scoring round, it might say you have to have 5 or 6 cows out there. So you know these from the beginning and you know what you're going to have to achieve, and you can kind of plan for these. One of those scoring objectives is your personal scoring objective. And so that's usually the one that you're going to target, because if you complete that scoring objective, you will score double points for it. The bottom half, I think, is the interim scoring round objectives. And then on the top half, it works a little bit like the building cards from your hand. If you have the resources and you meet the objective of that top half, then you can place one of your workers out there. It'll stay there for the rest of the game, but you can score a lot of points through that. It's like usually 8 or 9 points that you can score, which is quite a bit. And then you'll get extra workers back from it and usually a bump on some of your income tracks. So you'll earn coin income and then card income, which is also a resource that you can acquire. And then one of the funnest things about this game is the way that resources are managed. So you don't actually have like resources in front of you. You're not collecting them. On your player board, you have this little canoe track on the board. And depending on where your canoes are at, that gains you extra resources in the game. So you start with, I think, 1 that you get to pick that you upgrade, and you have just 1 permanent of that resource. And then wherever your canoes are at, you can have extra resources. So max throughout the game, if you upgrade that resource twice, you have +2 just permanent. And if you had both of your canoes there, that's 4. That's the most you can have. So a lot of it is about manipulating where your resources are at so that you can play cards. You can move down the river for free. And then every time you want to move your canoes back up the river towards the beginning again, you have to actually pay coins in order to move back up the river. So a lot of it's managing those resources, playing out your cards, and maximizing being able to play a card and take the action every turn, because the cards all have a symbol on them. I think it's like noon, like dawn, noon, and dusk or something. They're just like times of day. And so if you take like a dusk action, you can play a dusk card, but you can't play one of your daytime cards or one of your morning cards. So you have to align, do I have cards in hand that I can play, that I can afford to play, and that match the action that I'm going to take. So there's just so much kind of juiciness going on in this game. I absolutely had a blast with it. And the solo AI is simple to run. This is one that I will certainly come back to and am looking forward to playing again. So that is my number one, Boon Lake. All right, everyone. So that is my 10 games from my second solo challenge ranked. You can definitely drop me a comment below. Which games have you played? Have you played any of these solo? Particularly, there were several on here that are fan-made solo versions, either entirely or ones that I just played fan-made. And have you tried any of them? Do you like fan-made games from Board Game Geek for solo? Or do you prefer to only play games that have an official solo variant? Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate everyone who checks out these videos, and for those of you who have been sort of pinging me or encouraging me to get on it and record this video because you're waiting for it. I hear you. I will try to do better at getting these videos out in a little bit more timely manner. But until next time, have fun playing games with your family, friends, and especially solo. Bye.